Hi, Minister. Great to have you here in studio.
It's good to be with you, Vassie.
I appreciate you making the time. You said today in the press conference with alongside Minister Boissonnault, quote, everything is on the table and how your government might respond to what comes down in Alberta. What does that mean?
We are going to take this back to the cabinet table and look at every option. But I have to tell you, Vassie, dealing with this, I will say, bomb that was dropped, this video bomb that was dropped by the Premier was difficult because what we knew we had to do first was center kids. And so I spent last night, this morning, talking to kids, talking to trans activists and friends, just to figure out how they felt and frankly bring some comfort. Because also at that press conference, I said, people are waking up this morning, kids are waking up this morning in Alberta and feeling entirely unsafe. So yes, we are going to bring this to the table, and all options are open at this time.
When you say bring this to the table, I understand that the announcement from Alberta came, and the scope of it was not detailed in advance. But the Premier did indicate at the AGM that there was some kind of policy coming to rousing applause at the time. We know that a pronoun-centered policy in both Saskatchewan and New Brunswick was introduced in June and then in October of last year. Can you be more specific about the types of tools that you are considering in light of the fact that this isn't the first type of this policy to be introduced?
It's not the first type, and I'm glad that you mentioned rousing applause, because I really want to talk about the trend that we're seeing here with the Conservative Party. And Vassie, it was, a week ago that we saw the Premier on a tour with Tucker Carlson. He was spewing all sorts of hate, homophobic hate, anti-trans hate, and she endorsed that. And it's not a mistake that we're seeing this, a week later, and this is dropped at a time when they're not sitting. So this is a policy guideline, we don't know. But the question I asked was, is there a connection? And I believe so. We are seeing what's happening south of us in states like Florida and others. Tucker Carlson's in Alberta, and now we see this. And then I look at the actual Conservative playbook, their policies, and in it, it would prohibit trans kids from getting health-affirming, gender-affirming care. So the question is, as we see all of this coming together, what kind of candidate do we want?
But with great respect, Minister, that wasn't my question. And I understand your concerns around those policies, and those politicians deserve hard questions on them. My question to you was, what are you prepared to do to stop them? What tools are available to the federal government from your vantage point? And I recognize that you're unsure of exactly the form that this will take in Alberta, but we are not unsure of the form it did take in New Brunswick and of the form that it did take in Saskatchewan. In Saskatchewan in particular, the invocation of the notwithstanding clause in advance to circumvent the Constitution, to circumvent charter challenges.
This is covering, the Premier's video drop is covering a vast array of things. And that means consultation, Vassie. I'm not going to sit here and say to you, this is what we're going to do, because frankly, she is covering a lot of ground here, and it takes consultation. It takes doing something in a very thoughtful way. And with all due respect, yes, we've seen this in different provinces, but this and the scope of which a lot of this covers, it really brings together a lot of different ministers, different things, and so we've got to deal with that, and we will. But the other part of this is consultation, right? Like, who did Danielle Smith consult? Was she talking to trans kids when she put this together? Was she talking to...
Yeah, I understand those. She deserves those questions. I'm not trying to say that she doesn't. But even so far as the people whom you want to consult with, I mean, your government did a very lengthy consultation 2 years ago that you released in Pride 2 years ago, right? How much more do you need to figure out?
It was actually, so just this past June, within 10 days, because we were getting so many reports, and you see, and we've all seen, the rise in hate across this country, particularly with queer communities. We sat together, it was Minister Boissonnault and I and members of the community in Fierté Pride, and put on the table within days 1.5 million so that Pride festivals across this country, rural, urban, could pay for the security that they needed. The $100 million action plan, if you're talking about a couple of years ago, 75 million of that money, Vasi, has gone to grassroots organizations.
My point is, you did the consultation already. How much more do you think you require in order to come to a conclusion about what actions your government can take?
Because this is ever evolving. It's changing. I mean, we saw hate, but think of the last 2 years. I mean, the temperature is boiling now. We didn't see 2 years. It was rough for queer communities, but we didn't see what we're seeing now, where we're seeing, south of the border, conservatives coalescing, and we're seeing them come together with conservatives here. Like, this is a different thing, and so
but
this is evolving.
But it's not just overnight. It's not just overnight.
It's
with great
not overnight.
Respect.
It's not overnight, but it's evolving.
It is evolving,
Yeah.
but there are two pieces. There was one piece of legislation using the notwithstanding clause already last year.
Yes.
There is what happened in New Brunswick. In August, you called both those situations a life or death situation.
Yes.
And yet your government has not broached the subject of constitutional change.
But here's the thing.
It has not talked about withholding money through the Canada Health Transfer, both of which are options available to you.
It's community first, right? And that is what the community told us. When it comes to this, they want to be consulted. That is why the action plan, and I know I've said this, but I'm going to say it again, 75 million of it goes to grassroots, because they said, listen, we know what to do for our communities. We just need to be empowered to do it. So we said, okay, and consulted with communities across this country, and then got the money out. So there is support. I mean, kids in Alberta have support in grassroots organizations this morning, this afternoon, and 3, 4, 10 days from now, because of that national action plan and the monies that have gone to those communities. So this government, we're not just joining this. This isn't just we're getting on it now and what will you do now. This is, we've been here and will continue to be here.
And I'm not trying to intimate that you're not showing support through that money. My question is more, if this is such a threat, as you said, to what kind of Canada, I think the way you phrased it was, what kind of Canada do we want? If you believe it is to the level of a threat that you have depicted, you and your cabinet colleagues have depicted, and it isn't brand new, then why can't you be more specific about the types of options that you could pursue? Are you unwilling to because there's a political reason not to, because it would be damaging in Quebec to talk about the notwithstanding clause? Like, what is it?
No, not at all. It's about understanding, because the stakes, we have been there as the stakes have risen, and as I said, the emergency money, the grassroots money, and now we're delving into new territory. So this is going to take, listen, the federal government has been an example here. But this is all hands on deck, Vasi. This is everybody, every government needs to understand that this is important. And this is more than allyship, it's action. So we're leading here, but as you know, they're provincial jurisdictions. So we're hoping that we're leading by example in supporting communities so they can be strong and stand up. We're also telling others to do the same.
Do you think, though, that by some chance, Alberta will have a change of heart based on the federal government's action?
I would love for Alberta to have. I was sitting down.
But do you think that's realistic? I mean, the Premier is incredibly specific in what she wants to accomplish.
She's incredibly specific. But I was talking to, and I will say her name, Anna Murphy, this morning. Had breakfast with her, and she shared with me that the Premier had been very receptive about a lot of different issues, and she was in shock, and those are her words, that this even happened, in shock, because they thought that they were moving in a certain direction, and this was a complete juxtaposition.
So do you think there's a way, to be blunt, do you think there's a way that the Premier will change course? Do you think that's possible?
I would hope. I mean, I will never, ever write anybody off, Vasi. I hope so. And I'll tell you, trans kids in the queer community hope so too.
Just before I let you go, on the point of consultation and the sort of work that you have laid out you would like to see done prior to coming to any conclusion about what actions the federal government will take, can you put a timeline on that?
You know what? Our team has been working actually as of last night, and we are going to be doing consultations across the country. They will start as early as 2 weeks from now.
And for how long before you come to a conclusion, for example, about whether constitutional change is necessary?
What happens in rural Canada, and this is what we've learned with queer communities, and we learned so much through the pandemic as well. What happens in rural Canada, where people, it's harder to come out, everybody knows everybody sometimes. There isn't as much support as there might be in urban centers. I mean, we've got to make sure that we include everybody, and when I say everybody, all provinces and territories. So I'm not saying this is going to take forever, but I do want to hear in an inclusive way what community wants, how community is feeling, and how we can move forward together.
The Premier's office told us they want to see all of this implemented by the end of the year. Will you have a response from the federal government before then?
I'll have a response.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to leave it on that note. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.